Welcome to HerStories and Housing. I'm Jen Yosef, CEO and co-founder of Mighty, a real estate technology company. We have a great episode ahead of us where you will get to hear from an icon and an individual who needs no introduction, Helen Hanna Casey, the CEO of Howard Hanna. The real estate industry is revolutionizing at an incredible pace, and there is no shortage of innovation or growth. This is exactly why I was drawn from pivoting my career as a civil and nuclear engineer into running a startup that is solving one of the biggest pain points in real estate, inspections. Our platform provides data-driven costs on home repairs, pre- and post-inspection for every real estate transaction. As our company has partnered with Howard Hanna over the last year, I've had the fortune of peeking into some of the incredible work that they are doing behind the scenes. So without further ado, let's chat with Helen.
Well, I should say that in our family business, we grew up with two family businesses. My mother's family also had a family business, a funeral business, but still it was a family business. So we always knew that entrepreneurial spirit. We always understood it. Okay, and unlike today, my father was home for dinner every night at the same time. This is the 1950s and 60s, and he was home and so we knew about it, and we had a home phone that was connected to the office that was the children's phone after 9, but it wasn't as all pervasive as I think all business is today with kids. So, but the spirit of entrepreneurship was very much so part of our whole upbringing, part of what we did. And so I don't think any of us planned on going into it. It was not our parents' choice originally, right to the extent that they had assumed that we would not go into it, and my mother was crushed when my brother announced he was coming home from, when he was finished college, he was coming into it. He had worked all through school. But they were smart enough to say to us, let's get your licenses at 18, because someday they'll put in requirements and you'll have to take classes. So my father made us take classes anyway. So I think it was that spirit, certainly my brother being the leader that said he was going in. My sister has a master's, amazing, a master's in special ed, and came in to work for the summer. Took over the checkbook and stayed forever. And I came in as a history major, getting my master's in history, and really, in my case, needing to support a family. And so I think in that regard, we came in for different reasons. But once we were there, my parents said, it's yours, but only if you work at it. I started out in college. I was a rental agent in the summers. But I was a sales agent, just like everybody. My brother started out like a sales agent. Everybody except my sister did. I was a sales agent, all right? And in the late 70s, we were growing fairly rapidly, and we were smart enough to realize that we maybe needed to bring in some outside consultants. And it was the outside consultants that said, people expect nepotism here. You know, it's okay. It's not okay in all companies, but it is here. And I was the sales associate actually in the North Hills, so it didn't appear we were all in the same building. So I was in like our 5th office that we opened. And I came back and managed our Shadyside office, and then became a regional manager and a general manager, and then the president of brokerage, and now to the job I have today, which is all divisions reporting up into me. I think we were raised to believe in equality. I think that's incredibly important. I think my father in the 1950s hired women. And it's funny, I was talking to somebody about another panel today and saying this, that in the 1950s, people couldn't have conceived how much women would accomplish in this business, how much they would be able to function and raise families and do it all. You know, that old song, bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan. So I think that I was lucky enough to come in fairly liberated to start with, product of girls' schools, but also in a time where we were encouraging women to come into our business. And so I think that was a great thing. When you look at the 70s and 80s and into the early 90s, and you look who was coming in, it was primarily women, 75% women. Now, today, the balance has swung another way, and we have men and women coming in and succeeding. But during that period, so as a result, a lot of us learned from each other and from some great men, because I don't think that can be dismissed. Today, we worry so much about, are we mentoring women well, and do they have mentors? But you can't overlook the men that are mentoring you too, because they have a little bit of secret sauce about what you're competing with, rather than just listening to women's perspectives. So I feel very, very fortunate that I came up in a time where there were so many women succeeding around me. To think about what you're going to do now, not what you're going to do in 10 years. And I think that's a huge problem with women today, is that we give all of these women's seminars, we have them giving these long-term expectations of what you want to do instead of accomplishing a goal. And that is what's so wonderful about the real estate business, and all parts of it, by the way. It's not just in real estate sales, but all parts of it, that you can come in and you can get so much accomplishment so quickly. You can learn so quickly, because it's still, no matter what technology is out there, you are still functioning and doing all parts of it. You're following it through, and as a result of that, I think you feel accomplished, you learn something, and as you do that, then you can look at what else lays in the future for you. Well, I think you have to look back at the last 15 years or so to say how much has been added to it. And 10 years ago, we're saying, oh, real estate's all behind in technology. They actually weren't. When you think about, if you think about the progression of how computers have gone from dumb terminals that agents had to use, to using a Texas Instrument calculator, to today, when so much is done by technology, it has made people's life easier and more difficult, all of us, by the way, because we have to go through all the emails and everything we get every day. But so much has come out, and each year there's one or two really good things that you can adapt. And to us, that's part of the secret of being an innovator, is not just inventing it yourself, but finding the right platforms that your sales associates will use, that your buyers and sellers will use, that integrates with what we're using in our mortgage company, in our title company, in insurance. So how do you integrate those together to make it easier for the consumer? And there have been some really great tech platforms that have been developed for the consumers that we've actually learned to use as part of what we do. I think the next 5 years will also show us that we can streamline the process more for everyone with what's coming out. We can reach out to our clients and get beyond this idea of leads, because a lead is nothing. Just getting a name and address is nothing. It's working with that person to help them get to the next stage. And if we can combine the technology part of that with the personal part of that, I think we are so far ahead for the consumer and for ourselves. And I think that's what the goal is. As we've talked about, if I may mention your company, is that all right? Mighty, okay? Was Mighty a necessary technology program? Not necessarily, but it has made people's lives so much easier. And that's what it is. And then you get to the point of, can you plug and play it? And our major investments have been in companies, technology companies, where they go into our platform and then they can be plugged into that platform as part of it. You're not switching out, you're not using different passwords, different anything else. And I think that's what the consumer wants. Whether the consumer is our agent, whether the consumer is our builder, whether the consumer is the buyer and seller themselves. Well, it was all there. If you had asked us a month before, when we first had some little whiff of something, and if you asked us a month before, we would have said to you that we thought we were 40% ready. The day before, we thought 60% ready, and it depends on, obviously brokerage was less ready than mortgage was, which was less ready than title was, that was, but because a lot of that has been done by technology in some of those divisions for a while now. But in the end, we found out we were about 75% ready. Our adoption rate wasn't 75% ready, but the week after, we really believed that we had 75% of the technology that we needed to be able to exist. Within a month, we were feeling we had more than closer to 85 or 89. Then came the adoption phase. So people who had no time or desire, by the way, to learn the technologies that we had in place already, were suddenly spending time and taking the classes that we were having. I think we were able to develop classes that they could go back to more and more, because before that, I will tell you that most of our sales associates and our employees, they wanted those hands-on classes, and now we were doing them virtually also, and they were able to go back and work with them. Our university usage went up by about 450%. I mean, university's been there, it wasn't something new. All right, so a lot of the programs we have, and as I said, programs that we've invested in, programs that we've developed, but a lot of the best of outside technology, or prop tech as you call it, that you bring in that plugs and plays into our back of the house system, which is called Moxie, that those things that plug and play into that, our agents were suddenly adopting to. And I went to an open house I went to 4 open houses, believe it or not, open houses. It was great in a pandemic. Open houses this weekend, and I went to them that one agent has been in the business probably 40 years, and the other one, it was her first open house. And they were all using an iPad for people to register. They were all using a program called Spacio, which allowed us to collect that information, customize their needs to it, so that they weren't wasting their time looking at things that didn't matter to them. So, and if you had asked me that last year, I would walk into open houses with young agents and I would say, why aren't you using them? Well, they told me a piece of paper works too. Well, a piece of paper doesn't work. Well, I have to go back in history a little bit also. We opened a condominium division in 1977 when hardly anybody in Pittsburgh knew what a condominium was, because we had so few of them. And it was a separate location, and it was urban. As a matter of fact, the history of our company is we opened in Shadyside, which used to be urban. Now it's not. I'm not sure what it is. It's not suburban. It's not. Maybe it's suburban, but a little different, but still, that was our first office. But we opened that condominium division because we believed there was a demand that was growing for it. We've always had city offices. Coming here, we took a little different direction, because in the great growth of the suburbs, in the 80s, early 80s, we started a new construction division to work with our developers, to work with our builders. And it's funny because some of the technology that we had then, it just keeps getting revised and revised and revised. But it's really, the technology part of it's changed, but the result was to track the clients who were coming through the new construction sites. And it still works great from that regard, even though the back of the house part of it that you don't see has changed dramatically. But so I think we have always been looking to meet the demands of the clients. We have so many builders, developers, ourselves, looking for infill locations. We're selling them land, all right? But in many cases, they need a partner or they need some other connection, and that's why we decided to open this division. So not just an office here, although we'll sell resale out of it, but it's really a combination of that experience of new homes, new construction division, condo division, and what is in vogue today as we look at so many infill locations. Some of them big, some of them small, by the way. And so here they're handling projects that are 5 units for one person, which is an infill location, 1 unit or 2 perhaps, maybe an infill location, and then 200.